Top of the morning, Dan and Damien. Hey, guys.
Hi.
We're all friends here. U.S. announcing yesterday it carried out a round of airstrikes against Iranian-backed militia in Iraq and Syria in response to drone attacks by the militia against U.S. personnel and facilities in Iraq. Whoa. Well, what did we do to cause this? How did we offend you? The Iranians are our friends. We got this nuclear deal we're resuscitating. Gave them a bunch of cash.
Yeah, we buy our friendships, yes.
Well, sure, especially the lead state sponsor of terror in the world. We just haven't made enough of an overture. The fig leaf not big enough. Is that the problem? Well, let's ask Lieutenant Colonel Jim Carafano, VP at the Catherine and Shelby Cullum Davis Institute for International Studies at the Heritage Foundation, author of Wiki at War, and the recently released Brutal War, Jungle Fighting in Papua New Guinea, 1942. Jim, what's going on with, a bunch of friends that normally get along so famously under surrender Democrats?
Yeah, am I sensing a degree of sarcasm?
No.
You picked up on it? Wow.
I know. It was so subtle.
Very subtle.
Yeah. Here's the problem from day one of the Biden administration, which is really kind of incredible considering they went through this in the Obama administration and they're literally committing the same errors on the ball field, which is you're negotiating a deal with the Iranian regime on the Iranian regime's terms. How is that ever going to end well? And the Iranians are so disdainful, and this actually makes perfect sense from an Iranian perspective. And you have to understand this. In this part of the world, honor is power. You are respected if you are a powerful person, and if you are not, you are weak and humiliated. So it's important for the Iranians not just to get the Americans back into the deal, but to get the Americans back into the deal in the most humiliating way possible. So it's very clear who is powerful here in the region and who needs to be respected. And so continuing to conduct terrorist attacks against the United States is essential. And then for the United States to kind of, ping back is meaningless to the Iranians. They could care less if a couple of Iraqi militia get blown away. Mm-hmm. That's irrelevant to them. As long as the United States is obsequiously still trying to do a deal with them, they still are in the strong side of the power relationship. Now, if the Biden administration had not only done an attack, but then immediately announced they were suspending negotiations with Iran, that would have got the Iranians' attention. But really what we actually are doing, even though we're defending ourselves, ironically, we're actually demonstrating weakness to the Iranians, and we're emboldening them.
And did we warn people that we were coming to less than the number of casualties?
I don't know that. Typically we do these things at night when nobody's around in order to avoid civilian casualties. There was a famous incident where the Iranians shot down a U.S. Unmanned drone, and Trump decided not to retaliate. And his argument was, look, we're not going to send any message to the Iranians. We're going to bomb something at night. Nobody's going to be there, and they're going to care less about that. Because if I'm going to strike the Iranians, they're going to know it, and they're going to feel it, and it'll be a true instrument of deterrence. Like when they took out Soleimani, that got their attention.
Yeah, I'd say. That's a nice example in furtherance of distinguishing between the two administrations. Continuing on that idea, China, and Ezra Klein, he's one of the deep intellects of the left, as I'm told, over at Vox.com. He recently said in his podcast that of TikTok, you build some of that into TikTok. They're trying to make you like China more, which maybe is not even the worst thing. We've had propaganda efforts in this country forever trying to make people like America more. Why not use your algorithm on your free video app to serve up things that improve cross-cultural communication, right? Because that's what the Chinese communists are into, just a cross-cultural exchange of ideas. And boy, that observation from deep thinker Ezra Klein did not hold up too well as of last week when the outlet founded by the heroic Jimmy Lai, Apple Daily, the pro-democracy newspaper in Hong Kong was forcibly shut down. And frankly, nary a word from the Biden administration about that rather momentous occurrence, given the founder's profile in Hong Kong and China since Tiananmen Square. Biden administration on that event and on China as we stand more generally?
Well, the fact that the Chinese felt so compelled to do this, I think, says something. What are they afraid of? The fact that they have to shut down a tabloid newspaper. Well, one is I think they're demonstrating their raw, uncontrolled power, and they want people to fear them. But also, it demonstrates that they actually fear truth, and that's their weakness and a weapon we should use against them. Does this administration get it? No, I think it actually reflects Ezra's kind of notion, which is we should not try to poke the Chinese dragon. The most telling thing to me is when Americans are increasingly upset about the origins of the COVID virus and really want answers. The president came out and said a couple of things. He said, well, we will insist, we agree Americans should have answers, blah, blah, blah. We will insist that the WHO do a thorough investigation, which he knows they will not do. We insist that the Chinese cooperate, which he knows they will not do. And we will review the intelligence that we've collected, which we know will tell us nothing new. The President of the United States basically told Americans he will forcefully look after their interests by doing three things that he absolutely knows won't work. Now, what kind of message do you think the Chinese, and for that matter, the American citizens, take away from that?
Mm-hmm. Well, sticking on that, and since you mentioned the origins of the virus, a researcher who studies viral evolution at the Fred Hutchinson Cancer Research Center in Seattle did a report. It's not peer-reviewed yet, but he suggests that the viruses that cause COVID-19 did not originate at the Wuhan seafood market because of this identification of deleted gene sequences from the virus's earliest days. They had been posted to a website run by NIH, but were removed for unknown reasons. This is consistent with, Brett Weinstein, even before that, who's an evolutionary biologist, said 95% it came from the lab. But this is really something specific, gene sequences that were identified by this researcher named Jesse Bloom and were removed by NIH for unknown reasons. Maybe there's a legitimate reason, but there certainly is a question that needs to be answered.
Well, I think this goes back to the whole politicization of the COVID virus and how both the Biden administration and the mainstream media really weaponized it for a political purpose, which is to fight back against the president. I mean, clearly, Biden in his campaign adapted a narrative on COVID, which was designed for political ends, not to get to the truth of COVID. And he was aided and abetted by the press and social media, which began excluding, demonizing, and sexually suppressing alternative information. So this really had a chilling effect. And you ask yourself, the kind of research that this person has done, and it has to be verified and all that, but all that probably would have started way earlier if people weren't scared, humiliated, afraid, convinced that there was nothing worth looking into. This is what's a reminder of why freedom of expression and freedom of the press and freedom of thought and inquiry is so important, because the suppressing of debate and search and controversy inhibits the gaining and knowledge of information, and this is a great example of that.
Yeah, but who convinced the mainstream media to go along with this? I mean, I was brainwashed too for a while with all story after story of a man got it from animal to human jump. Well, how did they get to them to force that on them? That's what I don't understand.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, in fairness, zoonotic transmission, human beings getting it from either a wild or domesticated animal is a common method of transmission. So it's not an unreasonable conclusion based on the limited information that we had. But there's a difference between saying, well, what's logical based on the limited information we have, and what's possible if we actually investigate further. And the problem is we skipped step 2, because the president of the United States said this is China's fault. His presidential opponent was committed to saying, no, it's not China's fault. And the press, like little lemmings, and social media essentially adopted that same mantra. There's no logical reason why the president should be suspended from social media platforms. There is no logical reason why people should have censored debate about the origins of the virus, which, I mean, I could, that's not even medical information in the sense that's going to affect, how people respond individually. Okay, it's not like people were putting out like phony medical treatments or something. And those 2 acts alone were, I think, really, really good examples of oppression of free speech, and it had a detrimental effect. And people were actually wrong. And it's not like, oh, we made a mistake. I mean, I could get that. Oh, we're sorry. Every major attack on the last administration and every major news story where if Trump thinks it's right, we all know it's wrong, has proven out either completely or largely false. Every one of them, over 4 years. It's an unbroken record. If you could play like that in the major leagues, you'd be in the World Series. They were wrong every single time. And to me, what the biggest concern here, our governments learn nothing. I mean, Biden and Harris go out today and lie to people's faces and continue to do that and hope they have an obsequious press that won't push back. And we still have the same behavior from the press. And look, they're still doing things like banning the president from social media outlets, even though all the reasons that they banned him have proven demonstrably false.
Last week, you made what I thought was a really strong statement about the senior leadership of the U.S. military, speaking of somebody who served our country for 25 years in the Army, and saying it's, the weakest in your memory, has no understanding of the political landscape or ability to operate in the political landscape as it currently exists. K.T. McFarland, we had on the show a couple of days later, agreed with you wholeheartedly. And I thought that was a strong statement. And then after Mark Milley, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Mark Milley, testified on the Hill last week, I thought it was an understatement. After Admiral Gilday and General Austin, but Army General Mark Milley, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, I've read Mao, I've read Karl Marx, I've read Lenin. That doesn't make me a communist in defending his promotion of Henry Rogers, a.k.a. Ibram Kendi. I mean, this guy, I know he's got big titles and he's a general, and we're supposed to defer to people who've served our country and ascended to such heights. But, I mean, he presented himself as a pseudo-intellectual asshat, as far as I'm concerned, on the Hill. And his moral indignation may have fooled members of Congress, but it didn't fool me, and I wanted to get your reaction to him.
Well, I mean, that was a completely nonsense statement. I was taught communism at West Point. I read Karl Manifesto. I taught the Russian Revolution and Marx and Lenin at West Point. I taught it in the history department. I taught it because people should understand it. I did not teach it as indoctrination. And he damn well knows that the introduction of books like Anti-Racism are not meant to understand the culture debate in America today. They are designed as indoctrination to convince people that they are wrong and they need to overturn the political and cultural and social order in America today. He is providing, in his testimony last week, that was very clearly cover for the Biden administration, which has endorsed critical race theory, which is in itself a racist theory, which if actually implemented under U.S. law would actually violate civil liberty laws. And he knowingly did that. And that is the definition of the wrong action of a senior military leader, to provide political cover for a political leader for political purposes. So that was, I think, the confirmation that we have senior military leaders which are literally failing us every day, because all they are doing is, rather than providing military advice rather than providing honest, which are actually required under the Constitution, honest answers to members of Congress. They're literally delivering administration political talking points.
The book, Brutal War, Jungle Fighting in Papua New Guinea, 1942, Lieutenant Colonel Jim Carafano. Jim, thanks as always.
When generals spoke their mind. All right, gotta go.
There you go.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
The stories you need to know to start your day. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
For commercial and industrial roofing, Waukegan Roofing has been the gold standard for Chicagoland since 1914. They have you covered, literally. Nothing matters if your business roof isn't right. Contact them for an analysis.
Bruce Diedrich here from Waukegan Roofing. It's that time of year again.